thank you so much for being here today. This is a really exciting moment in time because I get to draw together three of the smartest people in education that I get to work with all the time. So what you'll experience is less panel-like and more an insight into what happens when we kind of gather at the pub together and have a bit of a chat. So I will start at the end here. Jeanette Chia, she is the CEO and founder of the Hacker Exchange. Jeanette has done some extraordinary things in working not only with tertiary students, but school-age students as well in really actually hacking away at an education worth having. What I really love is Jeanette works inside organisations to bring a really clear process and opportunities and networks. And some of those insights I think will be really powerful for this group as well. We've got Brett Wood. This is the principal, the founding principal of Music Industry College in Brisbane. Basically, Brett started a school. And without stealing any thunder, it's one of my favourite facts that Brett actually runs a school that is the only registered nightclub in Australia. And I mean, we're all like, oh, that's a school I could get on board. Is it School of Rock? No. Is it a rocking school? Absolutely. So Brett will give you some of those insights into what happens when you start something from the ground up and how is that going 10 years since its inception. And Debbie Dunwoody. Debbie is one of my most favourite principals. So are you, Brett. I said it out loud, said it here on the stage. Debbie has an exceptional career in education, 30 plus years. She is the principal of Camberwell Girls Grammar School. Camberwell Girls is celebrating its 100th year this year. And Debbie is quietly and powerfully making some significant changes that will absolutely and fundamentally change how we see some of our traditional schools operating. Debbie serves on many different organisations and boards, so is a very well connected and incredibly well respected and awarded principal. Some of you may have recently read her interview in CEO magazine. So I get to hang out with really cool people, as you can see, and today's chat is very much around, so what are our students doing? We'd love it if we bent your perception of school and school land, if we told you some really good news stories, and gave you some insights into how you can come and play with us as well. But I want to get a bit of a sense, who currently works in a school? Can you put your hand up? Oh, yay, got our schoolies here. Nice, are you teachers? Yeah. Some of you are like, sure. Okay, so we work in a school. Who works in a tertiary sort of education setting? Nice. Who has an organisation that works with students or maybe provides a service to a school? Perfect. L&D coordinators or involved in learning in organisations? And the rest of you are just super fans of school? Nice. Yes. Love it. Beautiful. School-age children? Who has them, not who is them? Nice. 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 On that note, on Friday, I am hosting a panel of school-age students, and it is, what do the kids have to say about all of this? So I invite you to make sure that you lock that one in your calendars as well. Okay, so I want to start off on a note around school. We're going to unpack this whole kind of idea of school, and everyone has this sort of perception of, oh, school is this, school is that. Who loved school? Yeah, all of us like, yeah.
Parts of it.
Who hated school?
Other parts of it.
Okay, and who like did school? It's fine. Yeah, so we've got a nice bit of a mix here. So Jeanette, I know that you've just been back from USA,
Yes.
Just been back from San Francisco, but there's lots of things that the Hacker Exchange does. So give us a bit of an insight, in your words, Hacker Exchange, and what's something that you're celebrating at the moment?
Yeah, thank you, Summer, and thanks for pulling this panel together. Thank you all. I know you've got some great opportunities to go to other speakers, so thanks for choosing us. The Hacker Exchange essentially works with tertiary institutions and schools around Australia to provide immersive, real-world and global experiences for kids and teenagers and young adults and older people. Our oldest student was 70-something and our youngest was 16. We basically embed ourselves inside these organisations, and we've successfully had our 2-week programs accredited for academic credit by some of Australia's leading universities such as ANU. So in San Francisco recently, I took a bunch of girls who were in year 10, entering year 11 this year. They'd just been through an epic process at Monash University. There was 270 of them, whittled down to the top 8. These young women had coded a prototype glove that could translate immediately Auslan sign language into written text and then to audio. They're 16. And they'd not only prototyped the technology, they also pitched and created the business model through the Hacker Exchange process that we took them through. We took them to San Francisco, they held their own at Airbnb, they held their own at NASA, and it's being able to watch those young people just kind of come into their own and sort of explore what they can do and become global citizens from day one. That just really excites us. And the question, what are we celebrating?
Well, apart from that.
Sorry, apart from all that, we're a startup, so we're celebrating still being in business, and we're celebrating that we're more than doubling our growth year on year for the last couple of years.
Nice, well done. That deserves, I think, a visit. So Debbie, I want to throw to you on that, particularly with this idea of 16-year-olds solving problems, and all of us are, oh my goodness, that's amazing. Is that extraordinary or is that ordinary? You've got so much to celebrate this year at Camberwell. Yeah. Tell us a bit about it.
Thanks, Summer. As Summer mentioned, we're 100 years this year, so a great milestone in our school's history. But we are in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and we are in a demographic that really values the ATAR score, and in fact our ATARs get scrutinised to the hilt every single year. So it's interesting that as a school, we have to look at how can we help our girls show their uniqueness. Because as we know from organisations like the Foundation for Young Australian, there might be 650,000 unemployed or underemployed young Australians, but there's about 65 million in the Asia Pacific region. So as I think about the future of our girls in foundation or prep as you know it, this year be graduating in 2033, probably have some form of professional life and will maybe retire about the 2080s. We've got to start thinking about what sort of world are we preparing them for, and does this ATAR cut it anymore? And as an independent school, I have to draw a very narrow line between how innovative can I go all at once, because I am very dependent on enrolments as well. So you travel this really fine line. Going back to Summer's question, the interesting thing is I actually think there's so much there, and there's so much to engage our girls in. And it doesn't just have to be, STEM sort of opportunities. We're about to have a huge performing arts festival to celebrate our 100-year anniversary, and we're going to do one aspect of it. It's going to be a huge puppeteering display. Think Warhorse, but not quite as big. But we're having a puppeteer and opening our makerspace where girls from all different ages can work with the puppeteer before school, middle of the day, after school, to actually, create these puppets and learn. I'm really interested in how can we document the evidence of what they're doing so that they can actually show it to people down the track. So as our girls have experiences, they need to be able to show that so that their whole history is not based on this one ATAR. So I actually think we're just starting to untap the huge potential that so many of our kids have and are so keen to learn and really focus on things that really interest them.
Nice. We'll dive a little bit deeper into some of those stories of what a successful learner looks like. I mean, the big thing is that these are going to hit your workplaces. These are going to be buying your products. They are going to be interning in your organisations. Have that understanding of what are we doing there behind those school walls. We really wanted to open that out. So I know Debbie's got some great stories, and even from within the school walls, what resources do we have? It's incredible. So Brett, Debbie talked about uniqueness. You started a school to apprentice kids into the music industry. Yep. Like how, why, when, what?
I think, I've been doing teaching for a long time, 30 plus years. I did the Education Queensland route for 16 years and ended up at a place called Browns Plains, if you're not familiar with that. If you're from Sydney, then Mount Druitt out in the western suburbs, and I guess I don't know a lot about Melbourne, but I think Frankston's kind of similar to what Browns Plains is like. Okay. And so I landed there and consistently saw kids disappearing from school. I was a PE teacher, and often kids will behave for you because they get to run around and don't have to sit still for very long. And so I'd see good kids disappearing from school, and I go and see the boss who I had a good relationship with, where these kids are, we had to move them on, or they've decided to leave school. And I just got more and more frustrated with that. And I didn't live too far away from the local area, and used to go down to the local shopping centre. I'd see some of these kids and they'd strike up a conversation, and I'd say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, well, you think about drugs, sex, not so much rock and roll." But they're doing that on their weekends, breaking enters, all sorts of stuff, trouble with the police. So I was like, well, these are decent kids at school, what can we do? So we started a youth centre, and we built a recording studio there, a narrowcast radio station, a record label, and a live music venue, and we couldn't get rid of them. In fact, one weekend our staff were really sick. It wasn't the coronavirus, it's okay. It was just a common cold, but we're all crook, or a couple of people were away. So they actually broke in, didn't steal anything, just used the facility. And then when I turned up again because we were still volunteering at that stage, turned up the next Tuesday night and I talked to a few kids. They said, "Well, we're not going to tell you who did it, but just let you know that we didn't take anything." So, and so then that segued into, we couldn't get rid of these kids, and we're doing hip hop programs a lot with kids that were literate. I had one kid, big human. He was trilingual, could speak 3 languages fluently, but could not read nor write. And so through hip hop program, within 6 months, he could read and write his own rhymes. And I remember the day he could do that, he gave me a bear hug. I'm alive today to tell the story because he was huge and he nearly broke me. And then about 3 years later, I saw him in the Queen Street Mall in Brisbane, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm a security guard." No surprise, but he was happy and reflected on that. So the school just morphed out into, that's where it came from. It's like, we're doing this drop-in centre, let's turn it into a school, and we still can't get rid of them. They're still there.
That's amazing. Can I just round of applause? First time I've heard that story too. So that was
pretty
amazing.
cool. I want to ask, why is your school a nightclub? I mean, I know the answer, but it's a cool one.
So when we designed the school, we first started, we were in a PCYC, we were in the Fortitude Valley PCYC, which is a crazy place. It's right next door to the biggest police station in Queensland for a reason. And not our reason, the police station's big for a reason.
Gotcha.
We coexisted in their building for a while, which was interesting. Then we outgrew it, and we were stepping on their toes, and they were stepping on ours. And we were running a live music venue there. We had bands. I don't know if you listen to Triple J, but Violent Soho played in there once when they were a baby band, and Tim Nelson from Cub Sports played there, and all sorts of people came. Amy Shark, her name's Amy Cushway, she played there. We gave some of these kids their first gigs when they were just tiny humans. And we moved out of there, and then when we were building our building, one of the things I was really adamant about was that we don't want it to look and feel like a school. And the bank was happy about that too, because they said, if ever you go bust, it'll be easier to sell, because schools are really hard to sell. And they were pretty upfront about that.
They're really positive about what you
Banks are pretty risk averse, let's just say that. And so I was like, let's make it look less like a school that we can. And downstairs I said to the architects, I want this to look like a nightclub that can be used as a classroom. And when we talked to the town planner, he's like, well, if you get a venue permit and a neighbour complains, council can take that away really easily. But if you get registered use as a nightclub, they have to take council to court to overturn your terms of use. I'm like, you go for it, son. So we're the only school in Australia that's registered as a nightclub.
I love that, with kids breaking in.
Yeah, well, they don't anymore. And they run the nightclub, but we can talk more about that later. But they book the artists. Like we have international acts, national touring artists. We've had ARIA Award winners play on the stage, and the kids book that. They do the sound, they do the lighting. It's as real world as you can get. They actually do that.
So thinking about that real world concept, Debbie, and I know we're working together in full disclosure. All of us are sort of working on similar projects, but Jeanette helps us out with a lot of this real world stuff, and I'm involved in the school as well in terms of, well, let's bring clever people in who are working on really clever things and flood our students' lives with people just like you. So Debbie, in terms of that real world and that need to give them something that they care about, you talked about credentialing. Yeah. What's that all about?
Yeah. So look, there's probably a few things to talk about. For me, I've seen over many, many decades, the things that kids are really passionate about are things like where they can make a difference. They really want the world to be a better place. And so, that's a great hook for us as teachers to get them really engaged and involved in things that they really want to do. But the reality is too, in the sort of environment that we work in, and I am sort of emphasising the 8R because I think if we want to make a difference in a number of schools, we almost have to do this dual thing in our, more traditional schools, we almost have to do this dual thing at one time. We've got to be preparing them for the current system that's there, but we've also got to give them opportunities that can help develop them. So I'm really interested in people coming into our school. We have an invention program. We've started up a really successful co-design your own elective programs where girls can be working on different projects. But I'm really interested in people that can come in and whether they can provide some form of credential for the work that they're doing with our students, or they can highlight their work, the students' work in their own sort of media platforms so that the girls can have evidence of what they can do. That's what I'm really focused on and really, really interested in, because I have to say to you that the resource is amazing in schools. The kids can teach themselves so many different things. If you engage them, you hook them on something that they're really interested in, you'll be absolutely amazed where they go to. I mean, some of our girls are working on projects with IP lawyers and engineering firms to miniaturise devices that they're creating as well. And that provides great evidence, but for people coming in, we need support in schools. Our teachers can't provide that expertise in all the different realms of interest any students may have. So, if you've got something to offer as schools, like I'm really interested to talk to people, but I'm really interested in how can you help our young people also be able to demonstrate what they've been able to learn or what they've been able to do with your assistance.
It's an interesting point in time. You've got young people that are incredibly connected and yet seriously underestimated. These stories are not highlight stories that everyone in the school is thinking, oh gosh, how was your work with the IP lawyer? Brilliant, but what we think is extraordinary is ordinary in these schools. They're often, students are managing networks of thousands of people. They're doing the roles of CEOs and project managers already. At Music Industry College, they're partially running Laneway Festival in Brisbane. We've got our girls here at Camberwell, as you said, that are already looking for ways that some other expert can say, you're really good at that, and I'm saying so as well. So Jeanette, for example, we've been in conversations around if there is something around pitching and communicating, rather than us saying, that's great, which is awesome, Jeanette says, no, that's really good, trust me, because I see people pitch in Silicon Valley all of the time. So it's really that assistance of a pool of experts that can verify for our young people. So Jeanette, what are you seeing in terms of that kind of credentialing? And I want to share a story before you answer that to give you some context. There was a call out from Melbourne Knowledge Week last year, and it was about, I think it was something around a student breakfast. Me being me went, great, I'm going to flood the room with teenagers because there'll be heaps of teenagers there. And it was all of us. There were adult learners there mainly. But there were 3 girls from Camberwell that in the dark at 5 a.m. got on a train, came and met us in the city. And the panel was talking about the distinct need for skills such as design thinking consultants in different organisations. And the girls leant over to me, all of year 9, I think they were at that point, and said, but we've done design thinking. Evan, remember that course that we did? And I said, yep, we put up our hand. I was sitting right here and you were on the panel, and said, so if these young people who are 13 are credentialed in design thinking, who's willing to employ them as consultants? And these girls were turning up. And it's a big question for all of you. If school students have the skills and the capabilities and the capacity you need, and the only thing not on their side is age, are you willing to make way for that?
I reckon after today you might have some fans in the audience for that question, Summer. But I've got to say, and I've got to do the call out to the area that we work in the most, right? So we're definitely seeing that breakfast is a perfect example. Industry recognising that new credentialing, new kinds of skill sets and mindsets are required for success. We've heard it all day long in every stage here at PAUSEfest. And then you've got from the bottom up schools like bubbling up all these amazing courses and teaching young people, you know where there's a crunch and I'm going to challenge my tertiary mates in the room? What's going on at uni, guys? By the time these girls get to university, I would put to you that university is not ready for them. I would say that university takes too long to get a brand new course accredited. 2 years to approve a course is not fast enough. Things are changing at the speed of light. You see like companies like a Cloud Guru, right? So this amazing startup founded in Australia, they crowdsource changes to their content on a daily basis. That is the speed of education. That is the speed of change that people that are moving to the workforce today need, and that's the age group that we tend to work in. So I understand you're saying that the young ones are coming up, they could work now, but they will work in the future. When you're at tertiary level, those students are looking for jobs tomorrow, and they're going to need their skills to be updated at the speed of light. So I would challenge my uni mates. I know that there's innovation happening in pockets of the universities. Many of you are probably in this room today, and I would say you guys are thriving probably in spite of, not because of the current structures. That's my university.
Brett,
actually, no, Taylor Swift says don't
apologise.
apologise. I'm not going to apologise.
Don't apologise. Brett, I know that you're bubbling going, university.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm talking to a room full of risk takers, I'm assuming, right? That's why you're here. The people who aren't the risk takers are, you know, sitting in those universities making decisions.
Potentially, allegedly.
Potentially.
Some of them are.
Courses taking time. I didn't know that was a thing. Changing a course. I change a course like on a weekly basis, depending on where the kids are at. Like if your students are here, why are you still back here? Like I've got a student, we free up 3 hours of our kids' time for what we call passion project. We've got a kid that's coding an app. I have no idea what he's doing. No staff on our campus know what he's doing. But he's doing a killer job, we know that much. And when Dennis sits down and explains to me what he's doing, I'm like, cool, why didn't you do this at your other school? He goes, because that was behind where I was. He's already here. We have kids that get to first year university in music courses and leave. They ring me up, they're like, Brett, I'm quitting uni. I'm like, cool. Like I used to say, why? Now I'm like, cool, you've worked it out. And when I ask them why, they're like, because we already know this stuff. We learnt that in school. Like Summer said, we've got kids volunteering at festivals. I just got an email yesterday. 5 of our students late last year, year 11 students, late last year went and pitched to Brisbane City Council for $10,000 to help run. They want 20. They asked for 15, cheekily. They got 10. But I got the email yesterday saying they're getting the $10,000. That's 15-year-old kids going and pitching to council. I wasn't in the room. I left the room. I said to the councillors, these kids are going to pitch to you. They're like, okay, bam. When they walk out, like, wow, those kids are impressive. Why are we surprised? Something happened in the 60s, I believe. You know, we were talking about this before. You go back 100, 200 years, kings and queens were 12 and 13 years of age. 12-year-olds used to sail armadas into war, successfully skipper the whole fleet, win the war, take the vanquished ships back with them. We've got to be stopping being surprised that kids are really, really freaking good at what they do when they're given a chance. So, like we've said here, you know, Deb said it, are you prepared to take a risk on a young person that doesn't have a qual? I had a kid runs his own gigs.
Elon Musk is. He just tweeted
hiring
people
I know. Maybe
without
I should
high
hook
school
Dennis
degrees.
up with him. But
Yeah.
we've got kids that run their own gigs. They run their own companies. They're making more money. Some of them make more money than me a week. I had a kid yesterday. He just ticked over 2 million streams on Spotify alone. That's not Apple Music and Google Play and all that sort of stuff. Just Spotify. What are we providing for that kid? So this is what's happening at our school. It's what's happening here. You know,
I would suggest
you're
that
doing it in unis?
that's not just a challenge for schools and educators. That's a challenge, I think, for communities. I
Yeah.
mean, like schools and universities are you know, pillars of communities, and I think like everyone in the room here has something to add to education.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's also education and future of schools, not just for kids. It's also for everyone here. We've got to find other ways that we can continue to grow our learning using those additional kind of courses that are out there. So I think that it's a really good point around sort of trying to
time to
bring it all
change the
together.
model.
Yeah.
You know, going forward, where both of us are trying to work within a system, even though we're small and independent, we're still under, you know, the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, which is our biggest blocker to being as innovative as we know we want to be and need to be. You know, you're working within that Anglican system, and that's got its own.
The Anglicans are the least of my problems.
I'm sure they'll be pleased to hear that.
That's right. But I think I want to make, I think it's also important for us to remember schools are really, really important. And whilst we need to sort of have a look at how can we best prepare our kids and change, schools are fundamentally there for, well, I also believe is about developing the whole person. Sure. It's about relationships. Yep. And the other thing, whilst, you know, they are young kids and we shouldn't underestimate them, it's also important to help them navigate this world. And for us, being that community body, we're really nurturing their whole being. So schools, I think, are really important safeguards for kids as well.
Yeah. Was anyone in Stephanie's talk from Vice just before? Like, was it Stephanie from Vice? Yeah, that's such an amazing talk. She talked about this concept that millennials are sort of a pie chart of things that we do, and yet Gen Z and the alphas are kind of the layers upon layers of intersectional identities.
Yep.
And I just think that that's such an interesting challenge for us as people that educate, is how can we structure what we do to, you know, cover all those layers of identities, to flex, to have hyper-personalised learning the same way that you get served up your Spotify playlist.
Yeah, sure.
So I think, you know, this concept about the whole person has to include everything that they identify themselves as. So, yeah.
There's definitely something to be said around, you know, school is, they're highly human organisations. And in my conversations with the three of you and many, many others that I get to work with, the best of school is that they see the person first, that it's very much around making sure that they are thriving and well organisations. I mean, Brett wrote a book about his music industry college journey. The title of the book is a quote, a direct quote from a student: "I'd be dead without this school." I mean, at its core, these are organisations that keep young people alive and thrive when they're doing really, really well. That then it goes on to mastery of skills, character building, identity. There's one thing that we could also be challenged with by school, and it might be challenging for some of us that maybe didn't have excellent experiences of school. If we think about the best of schools, then shouldn't our organisations that we're working in mirror? So I'm the founder of an organisation, a micro-organisation, but work in partnership in a different kind of business model with others. And we've talked around, actually, let's have a look at our schools that are getting it right from the human and the learning part. Let's replicate how and what they're doing there. So school does form a pretty important function of community. Debbie, do you want to talk about that idea of connection? Because you spoke a lot about that in your recent article, and I know it's a kind of a fundamental DNA strand of your school.
Yeah.
Connection.
I'm not quite sure how to go from there. Except, you know, I think that notion we are better when we are together and we're thinking together, and we're better people, and we're also better learners and better thinkers. So, you know, I think one of the challenges for us at school is how can we actually organise different structures so students of different age levels, for instance, can be working together on different projects? How can we get more adults into our community? I mean, we're working a lot with our parents and our old grammarians to see how can we actually get more people to come in and to work in different ways with girls in our community. Connections, I think, are also about the structure of the school, and I look right now at this point in time, the best way that I feel that we can connect with people externally is through sort of what we've been calling pop-up or seasonal learning. So where we can have our normal timetable and still try and fulfil all the regulatory requirements, but we can take these little breakouts for pop-ups and get people in to do different work with kids in different ways. So, you know, that's sort of where I think connections are, it's really interesting. It's actually, you know, quite multi-layered and faceted.
And that connection is very much around, you know, I put in Bunny is real world, because I mean, it's not like schools are in some weird little matrix time zone all on their own, like they function and exist in real time and space. But there is a fear of, where are our kids going once we've finished with, like, what are you doing with them? Really? Where are they going? Oh my goodness. And for us to feel like we finish and they go is hard and heart work for us. So to have that connection between, hey, this is who they are, this is what they're doing and they're capable of, and they're then in a network and they're already in a fold of people, clever people like yourselves that get it and are going to build upon that work and are going to accentuate that work, is a big, big part. Jeanette, you kind of catch, I suppose, a lot of students and you do amplify that. How do you have connections back into a school? Because I'm guessing a lot of people are thinking, I want to get a little bit more invested. How do you do it?
Into like a high school? Or?
Yeah, into a high school.
I mean, I'll be honest, we're in the early in our journey working with high schools.
Yep.
But I mean, we do catch a lot of students that probably feel the same way some of those almost dropouts feel. We had a young student from Monash University. This is not he basically said, yeah, I want to drop out, work on my startup. It's a space a space tech startup. He's making CubeSats. You know, he's a cool young kid. You know, probably wants to pitch later. But he basically said he wanted to drop out and then realised that there were, he came on the Hacker Exchange because he found that to be something that was co-curricular and could help him, meet people that were outside his network and to meet people that were not in his discipline. And as a result, he has transferred his course to another university, not because it was a bad thing, but he ended up finding a space science course at RMIT that fit him perfectly, and he's moved over to that. But I think without the realisation that his career path and his university path didn't have to be linear, I don't think that young student would have actually made that choice. So I think we often fall into the trap of educating to the point of linear outcomes. And I'm hearing this invitation that you're making to the audience about how can we be exponential in our expectations of what students can do when they come out of school? Because they could be a founder, they could be an innovator in your organisation, they could be a banker, they could be a singer, they could do all these sorts of things, and they can do that all at the same time. And I didn't answer your question at all about moving back into schools. We definitely connect back into the universities to make sure that the stories are told internally. And I think that that's crucial because their peers need to see what they're doing. Right. And that's super important for us.
Nice, telling the stories. Brett, what are your thoughts around what happens after school? As a principal, what are your hopes, fears, realities?
I'm kind of with Debbie on this one, that I'm interested in the whole person. I tell the kids that at the beginning. I was saying to you before over lunch, we don't tell kids lies at school. We're pretty brutally honest with them. One of the first things we tell them is the music industry is really hard. But then I go on to tell them every industry is hard. My job hasn't always been easy. Being a principal of school, there are days where you wish you weren't. And so we're openly honest with the kids about that. And one of the things I say to them every year is, I really don't care about your grades. I couldn't care less. I care about you as a person. And I was having this conversation with Summer that the thing that I really want for my kids when they graduate, my students, is that you care for them as much as we do. And I think if you have a human-centered business and you're not worried about, I know triple bottom lines, all that kind of stuff, I know it's important, but at the top of your list must be the people. And it must be the people that are in your organisation. Because if you do that, I'll tell you now, we've got the data to back it up, our kids' grades improve. Because they stop caring about them, because they know you care about them, and then they'll do things because you care about them, right? And then they care about you, and it becomes this really nice feedback loop. And a couple of really smart people came and did some research on our school. They've got doctor in front of their name, so they're much more intelligent than I am, or academically gifted or something. And they did a 5-year longitudinal study on our school to find out what it was that was making it successful, and so kids didn't kill themselves, that's the highest priority for me. And they said when we did the 5-year study and we interviewed kids, we interviewed parents, they interviewed teachers, they said there's an ethos of care in this place. That's all I want. And in some of the bigger institutions, going back to why kids stop going to uni, they go from a small school of ours of 90 to a university of thousands to classes of 400, and they feel like no one gives a shit. So if they go and work for a corporation of 400, 500, 1,000 or more, then they feel like no one gives a shit. And if that's how they feel, they'll walk away, or worse, they'll be an unproductive worker. And I think that's my triple bottom line. If the staff and the students are happy and moving forward as a human being and becoming better people, everything else takes care of itself.
I remember spending some time in MIC last year, and some students were getting a little stressed about exams, and as they tend to in schools, and I said, you guys doing all right? You're about to do your final exam. And they said, yeah, doing it for Brett. And I said, it's your education, and you giving them the teacher pep talk. And they said, no, we've got a really good education from Brett, but if we don't do this, they might shut the school. So we do our exams as a favour to Brett. I thought,
you could purpose.
Righto. And it's very much echoed in some experiences that we've had recently at Camberwell, where girls got in touch with Debbie and said, all right, we now need to be walking our talk. We now need to be useful in service. There are a lot of people in our local and global communities that need us, and selling cupcakes is not the jam. So how is it that we can actually work in service alongside experts? Who are the experts? Can you find them? And that was been a really interesting, I want to say challenge, but they know exactly the pathway. So they want to work alongside scientists. They want to work alongside those that are working in community, work alongside data analysts. And for us to then say, here's a data analyst on tap, or here's a scientist or ecologist, we then say, oh gosh, we'd love a nice little Rolodex of all of those people that we can call on and say, we've got girls who are not only willing, care heaps, and are very, very clever. Help us to understand the skills so that you can be useful in a partnership together.
Yeah, so some of the context of this is around the bushfires that we've all witnessed over the summertime, and a number of our girls acknowledged that their families and friends, many people had contributed goods or money to help support the people impacted by the fires, and of course the animals too. But then that notion came up about, well, you know, in a few weeks' time, they'll be out of the news and another thing will take over. But we all know that some of these communities might take 2, 5, 10, may actually not recover. How can we be in there for the long term? How can we work with people so that we can be there with them 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the track and really commit to some really meaningful, purposeful service? And so what's been interesting is normally you sort of come back to school and everyone want to raise money and have your cupcake stalls and everything else, and you give your money to charity and that's it. But we've got kids now saying, no, let's just stop for a minute. Let's see what evolves. What do people need? Who can we work with so that we can make a much better impact? I'm digressing for a moment, but one of the interesting things that we're starting to see with some of our girls who leave school, who go to university as well, is that not all, but there are a large number that sort of don't do quite the full number of units, and they might do less units each year in their uni courses. But then what they'll do is they'll actually go and engage with another organisation. And I think this is a little bit, Brett, about going from the small school where you're known, you're nurtured. Where do you find your tribe? Who are they? And sometimes that's not uni for people, but if you can get involved with an organisation where you can be working with them on other projects along the way, we're seeing more and more of that happening with our young girls.
Yeah, we've definitely seen had a lot of success working with academics with work integrated learning units, so where they actually go out and get the real world experience and get credit to their degrees. I mean, internships are not new, but I think what is kind of cool and fun is that these students can work on their startup projects or on their social enterprise projects under the context of with a lens of entrepreneurship and get credit towards their degree, and it does not have to be anything to do with what they're studying. You know, and this cross-disciplinary piece that you mentioned around connecting different age students, something I think is crucial. We've had programs where there's a first-year marketing student in with a PhD Egyptologist, and I'm actually not exaggerating. They learned so much from each other. They went to Singapore together, they pitched different projects, and I think it's just opening our mindset to think about what are the ways that, because look, uni's not going anywhere, like it's not going anywhere, but I think what are the ways that we can augment and attach and, you know, partner with other organisations to allow more flexibility within the traditional degree. I know there's a lot of work in that, and work integrated learning is one that's worked for us.
And it's to be honest, it's not only about the students as well. As Brett was saying, he's got a student who is coding up something remarkable. Now, it's not taking the agency or professionalism away from our teachers as well. You can imagine in your jobs if someone said, I want you to do this, and they're going, oh gosh, I don't know how to do it. That makes us feel pretty crap, right? But to be able to say, I'm going to partner you with an expert here. Your expertise is in learning and designing learning and building those relationships, and someone else can come in and work alongside you to code. That's the sort of stuff that we're starting to want to flood in as well.